pull up the record. So we'll start the session today by paying our obeisances to His Divine Grace Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who is the founder Acharya of his International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So, like we know, we have this level 1 Bhagavad Gita online course having 9 sessions. And today we are already, believe it or not, on the 8th session. Which is the Supreme Controller. And after this, we will have the last session of this whole course, which is the Ultimate Perfection. And like you might have all seen, we have sent across the message around the level 2, which will dive in a bit more deeper into the Bhagavad Gita, where we kind of go more shloka wise, per shloka and explaining and all of that. So that would be the next level, which is level 2. And if you're interested, please, click on the link, and that will make you join the group. Yeah? So today's session is the Supreme Controller. And let's look quickly into the agenda of today's session. So we have it, the first topic of the agenda is, so we are going to talk about the controller, so which is the boss, right? So what is the concept of boss? Yeah. Is our real boss a person or an impersonal light? And this will, of course, make more sense as we go on to the details. Then, are there many gods or one God? I'm sure at some time point of our lives, we have this question in our mind. What scriptures say about this? Yeah. And why God is all attractive, unlike other bosses. And then, like every time, we'll end this with a practical tip of the day. So we'll start with this first agenda topic, which is the concept of boss, right? What is the concept of boss? So when we hear this term, right, what comes to our mind? The first thing which comes is the boss we are working with in this current world, right? And how do we see, the tendency of the boss in this world? That they are either exploiting, they are really utilizing heavily for all of our work. They are really authoritative, and they also tend to get rude, right? We tell people that, while we are interacting with each other, we have a mindset that, oh, this person is very bossy, or that person is very bossy, right? What does that mean? That they are really very authoritative, and they tend to make sure that what they are coming in with, the opposite person accepts it, right? And they are not very pleasing, right, at times. And also we see the tendency when we see the boss, the mentality of being full with pride, right? They're really proud of where they are, right? And how many of us really, when we think about boss in this material world, how many of us have a positive vibe when we hear that word? And how many of us maybe how many of you like your boss who is right now within your corporate world, within your personal world? So we all have, a trend where we have good bosses and bad bosses. And, I too had the same, right, in my tenure. So we always, think, even though we know that the boss we have, it might be good boss, a bad boss. And most of the time, these are the tendencies that they really exploit us. They make us work so much, and, because they want to have the outcome as per their needs, right? So we know how the bosses are in today's world, but still, we always think that when looking at their level, as when will I reach that level, right? When will I be like this, and when will I be like that? So it's like a constant thought which we keep thinking, that when will I get there? So what that shows us, that we are always looking forward for that role to be in, right? So what do we see here, right? We all want to get there, right? And and that too, there's so much constant competition, We try to pull each other professionally or personally so that we can get there faster. We play, we see that, the competition, it's not healthy at all. It's more of a, unhealthy competition, right? So why? Because we want to get there. We want to become the boss first, right? There's so much in corporate world. We see there's so much politics going on, just not corporate, even in personal life, right? At a different level of politics, but there is always, there is leg pulling, there is, and we feel so insecure. Many people, we have so much of inferiority complex, and some have superiority complex, right? So it works different way and whatnot, right? For career growth, for growing up in the ladder, for being recognized within the family. Also, we tend to, do so many things, right? That competition. So sometimes we also come across a situation where we stumble, right? We see that, oh, it's so difficult, why do I want to get there? But still, at that moment we feel that, but the next moment we feel, no, let me get into that position because that is stronger. We also see how stressful life our bosses have, right? How much they put the effort, so much of level of stress. We also see them undergoing so much of health issues, but still, we want to get there. So no matter what is in front of us, we still want to get there. It's so crazy, right? So why, why is this? So why everyone wants to be a boss, and why people want to be a boss? First thing which comes to our mind is that they don't have to listen to anybody else. They don't have to listen to others. Yeah. If you are the boss, we can live with our own terms, and make others' lives, act according to our terms. So because we always aim, right, to be somewhere else, and we know we don't tend to justify and be our best, at what we have right now, that kind of satisfaction. But with a subordinate position, we're not happy with that. We want to get in there, right? Because we think once we are there, we are at the top. Yeah, nothing beyond that. So unlike to this mentality, what we have now, we all must have heard, in our Vedic times, the servants, who used to serve the boss, used to stick, to their bosses for longer, right? For throughout their lifetime. Yeah. And the word servant was not interpreted like something really below, it is to serve somebody, in Vedic times, to serve your master was the main job, right? So even with our, why, when we go to Vedic times, let's come a bit closer to what we are right now. So when we even see our parents' parents, we see our ancestral time, that there were loyal servants, right? Who used to serve not only the boss, but the entire family. And they used to stick with one job, almost their lifetime. My father-in-law, have seen him. He has throughout started from scratch until, he ended his career sticking with the same company for most of his life. So there was a consistency, there was trust, there was, and there was nothing like, I want to be the boss, I want to serve. That was the attitude which was there. And in today's world, we see now it is not only difficult to get good boss, but it is also difficult to get good people who can serve, right? Loyal people who can serve. Now, like we spoke, why someone wants to become a boss? Because you feel valued, right? You feel nice to have control over people, over things, over decision making. You feel that you are powerful, yeah, and you feel that you will enjoy more. And and that kind of a feeling that, no, being a subordinate or serving somebody is not that great. It's like, I will be more proud if I'm in a position of boss rather than being a server, yeah, who is serving. We see, a different kind of mentality as well. In India, we have quite a lot of businessman setup as well, that we see a businessman can never work, right, in something like an environment of corporate world. Why? Because you have to work under somebody, right? Just knowing, hearing that thought, they will never accept it. So it's so difficult, right? So, and even in the service world, when we come to corporate world, when we start our careers, we know that we have to work under a boss always. But still, We start with that enthusiasm that I'll serve the best, but that mentality changes that, no, I want to be served now. So that kind of a thing. So even with the mindset of being, entering into that role, we don't want to stay in the same role. We want to, get higher up and wanting to become a boss rather than serving the boss. So overall, so what we see is, in today's world, the boss in whichever arena we have, they are mainly, around where we see more of exploitation, taking advantage of, the person who's serving. And that's one of the reasons why, people even don't want to serve, because they say the exploitation there, right? Whereas in Vedic times, how were the leaders? The leader would like to nurture, right, the subordinate. They wanted to empower the subordinate, right, so that they are known, right? So the bosses we are talking about now, it might be a boss of a company, a region, a country, under whose instructions, maybe the company works, as small as a company or a government works. But now we, have we thought about, the whole existence of the whole universe? Who is the boss of this whole universe? How does it happen? Everything is so spotless. So there is something, our mind limits to just thinking about the arena. But have you ever thought, that what is it making everything run so spotless? There is someone much more beyond to this, right? So this is what Krishna says here, there is a supreme boss, and who is that? That's him. So this shlok is from the 5th chapter, 29th verse. It goes like this. So Bhoktaram Yagna Tapasam Sarva Loka Maheshwaram Surudham Sarva Bhutanam Jnatva Mam Shantim Rachati. So a person in full consciousness of me, knowing me to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, the supreme lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attains peace from the pangs of material miseries. So this shloka is said by Krishna. Yeah. So Krishna is highlighting here that he is the supreme leader, the top leader. Yeah. Now let's analyze a bit more on the shloka. Yeah. So when he's saying Bhoktaram Yagna Tapasam, yeah. So he's saying that he is and Sarva Loka Maheshwara. So he's trying to say that he is the Lord. Yeah, he is the boss of all planets and also demigods, right? And Surudam Sarva Bhutanam. So that means that he is the well-wisher. He's the supreme well-wisher for us, for all of us. So he's a boss who wishes well for us rather than exploitation, right? So that's the problem, no matter how high we want to grow, we'll still be lower, and we have to accept that, because nobody can, even imagine, what Krishna is. It's not imaginable as well. So, so yeah, Krishna, I think here, when he says Bhoktaram Yagnapasan, that means he's saying that he's also the supreme enjoyer. Yeah. So we have, he also says in 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita that, whatever we do, whatever we eat, whatever we offer, whatever austerities we perform, we should do it as an offering to him. So that is how he is the supreme enjoyer. Yeah. And if we remember, in one of the classes, we also saw one of the shlokas from 3rd chapter where Krishna clearly stated that he has sent across the demigods and the living entity into this universe to perform yagna. And who is the yagnapati? Krishna, right? So he's the supreme enjoyer. And when we say controller, we see it clearly here. So it's just not the cosmic manifestation, but also the demigods, right? He's the boss of all the demigods. And we'll see further today's. So this shloka is really known, it is termed as a peace formula in Bhagavad Gita. Why is it called peace formula? Because once we accept this, that we can never be, the top boss, no matter how much high we go. Our acceptance level becomes contented, right? We get a kind of peace that we know that Krishna is the supreme controller. And whatever, he is the supreme well-wisher. So he's always gonna wish well for me. So that gives us, that kind of peace. Yeah. So when we say he is the supreme controller, also we saw this slide before, right? So now again, supreme controller, that means he's the supreme boss. And how? Because anything you take here, sunlight, sun, water, fruits, vegetables, our brain, every part of our body, can scientists really produce it? It's Krishna, right? We can see that definitely our scientific arena must have advanced so much. But can our science really produce a new kind of altogether species? No, right? Everything is given by Krishna, right? And we are utilizing each and everything. Without this, we cannot even think of survival, right? So we feel that, once we become boss, the other factor is that once we become boss, we will have things under control. At the same time, in last class we saw, which went, which was a bit complex, but I think the bottom line, we understood that not everything is within our control, right? Because material nature plays one of the main factors, right? So, and what is this material nature? Again, Krishna highlights in 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita that Maya Dakshena Prakriti. That means this material nature is one of his energies, and it is working under his supervision, okay, under his direction. So everything is within his control, right? Our body is made up of, or we saw 8 elements, right? Panchabhuts. So even this is coming from where? From this material nature, which is working under the direction of Krishna, right? So when, this is the acceptance level we should have. We also saw the example of a phone. To make a phone, mobile phone, how many brains are behind it? Yeah. So we all are putting so many brain, thousands of brain, and we're coming up with a cell phone, right? But how about the brain itself? Who has made it, right? So we can imagine how much complex it is, right, to make that. So the bottom line here is that if we disregard, the existence and predominance of Krishna, then all our acts become sinful. Yeah, he's giving us everything, so we should have the gratitude. Yeah? We should have the gratitude to give it back to him, right? Now we can correlate this with an example which might make it more easy for you to follow when it comes to this. So what do we see here? A house under construction, right? We all must have gone through this in life where our house is in construction. It's so much difficulty to just get it done, right? So we are constructing this house, and how does it progress? Because we hire different laborers, right, in different areas to construct this. Yeah, and we see how tirelessly they work hard, right, to get, working under the hot Scotch sun, with limited amount of facilities. So they tirelessly work for a long time. Now in end, say we had these laborers construct this house for us, and we are finally waiting for the house to be ready. And in the end, what happens is when it gets ready, they say that because they have worked on this house, they have put their efforts and they have spent the energy, this house belongs to them. And they would need, say, this part of the house for them. The carpenter said that, the electrician says that. How will we feel? It sounds so insane, right? And they, regardless of who provided them the material, the facility, the money, they still want to have the right on that house, right? So if they claim the ownership, that we are the owners because we have put the efforts, it sounds insane. It's very easy for us to say insane, but we are more or less doing the same thing, somewhere. So that is what Krishna is highlighting, that when he's saying Bhoktaram Yagna Tapsam, he's the owner of everything, right? Everything. And we can claim we claim the ownership of things, uh, just like these laborers, because we have put some effort in it, and we think it is mine. I am the doer, I am the owner. But that's not the case. If the laborer says the same, it wouldn't sink in us. We wouldn't accept that. So Krishna is a great supreme boss, right? That's what we see, who empowers us, right? He empowers us, providing the resources, what we saw in previous slide, so that we can utilize those resources. Why? How? In his service, right? He has given us everything around. We saw in that picture, as basic as sunlight. What would we do without sunlight? What would we do without plants who didn't give us the vegetables, fruits? As basic as that, as basic as our living. So how about the materials which we need to construct this house? Nothing. Nothing can be made by us. So and when Krishna is giving all this to us, like a one-man army, what are we, what do we give back to this boss? At work, at home, we give, things back. There are various things we do just because somebody is doing something. And that's a normal human gratitude, right? Which we have, that, okay, this person did something to me, let me somehow, give it back. But what are we giving back to Krishna in this case? Do we pay any bills, taxes for the sunlight, what we get, for water, what we get? Nothing, right? So all these are just free for us. And what is free in this world? Nothing. And Krishna is giving it lumped us, right? Everything free. And we are lending, that attitude we should have in mind, that we are lending something like brain, something like these resources from Krishna to survive in our day-to-day life. Yeah. And still, when for achieving even small things in our day-to-day life, and still we feel that we are the boss. We are the doer and owner. So yeah, so if we claim the ownership independent of Krishna, then what will we end up with? We'll end up committing being sinful. Yeah. So he is the supreme boss. And Krishna also says that he is supreme controller and also supreme well-wisher, right? His love is just unconditional for us, right? Unconditional love, but please remember, doesn't mean that whatever we do is loved. It means that whatever we do, we are loved. And we can correlate this with our children, right? So whatever they do, they will be loved by us. And we are children of Krishna. Yeah. So we should act in a way that we serve to Krishna and please him. So now, so far, we understand that who is the supreme controller, who is the supreme boss, right? And Krishna also clearly mentions it in Bhagavad Gita, 14th chapter, that he is the seed-giving father of this entire cosmic manifestation. Okay, so this is the first agenda topic. What is the concept of boss? And the second we go. Now, when we know, that we have a real boss, right? Now, some people, some class of people have a kind of misconception, right? That they are confused whether God is a person or a light, and this concept comes in how that when we say God is everywhere, right? Then they think that it has to be a light. It cannot be a person, right? So let's see, let's see whether the God is a person or an impersonal. So if God is supreme, the question comes is it a person or just an energy? Yeah. And if he's a person, then is his body same as ours? Is it made similarly like our body, or is it different? Because that question comes to our mind, right? When we are talking about a person, right? So let's see what the scriptures say. So this is a shloka from Srimad Bhagavatam. Vadanti tattvavidas-tattvam jnanam advyanam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavan iti shaktyate learned transcendentalists who know the absolute truth call this non-dual substance Brahman, Paramatma, or Bhagavan. So when we say about learned transcendentalists, yeah, who are they? So transcendentalist is a word you'd see, when you read Gita, very commonly being used, right? So these are the people who are not influenced by this material world. They are beyond. Yeah, they have the complete awareness of the whole spiritual realm, right? So like our acharyas we had, right? So what this shloka is saying, that they have, the learned transcendentalists, have said that the absolute truth means the supreme. Yeah, it is seen in three aspects. First is Brahman. Brahman is nothing but the existential aspect of God. It is everywhere, right? It is present everywhere. That is Brahman. Yeah, you might correlate this with Brahma Jyoti, what we say. Then comes Paramatma. Paramatma is nothing but the managerial aspect, located in every atom, every living entity, managing everything. So that is Paramatma, which is also called as super soul, right? And then Bhagwan. Bhagwan, who is Bhagwan? He's the possessor of lot of attractive qualities, and it's a lovable person. Yeah. Now let's understand this a bit more clearly, again with examples, because that sync with us more better, right? So moving further, then what do we see here? It's beautiful carpet, right? A green carpet, Mother Nature. So when we see this, this mountain or this carpet at a distance, it looks so much even, right? Like just like a green sheet. And it's say, we see this from the topical view from a aeroplane. Yeah. Now when we go a bit closer, what do we see? We get little more clarity, right? We start seeing that, oh, it's not just a sheet. There are different trees, there are rocks, there might be tiny houses which can be seen. And further, when we go closer, we can find that there are people living there are animals living there. So when we get closer, we get to see things in the perspective they are in real, right? Similarly, let's take one more example. Say sunlight. Yeah. So even with sunlight, overall this, we can perceive this in three ways, right? So first is, say, the sunlight, yeah, which is the light of the sun. Then comes the sun disk, right? Which is, as we go out and as we go and see clearly, we see the sun disk. And now if we go more closer, we know from our scriptures that there is a presiding deity of sun, which is sun god. So as we get closer to these things, we understand that there is variegatedness in each of these, right? We get more and more clear aspect, right? Similarly, there are three ways, and that's what, Krishna highlights, when we talk about sun deity, a sun god. He clearly says that in 4th chapter that I instructed this imperishable science of yoga, to the sun god, Vivaswan. That's the name of the sun god. And Vivaswan instructed it to Manu, the father of mankind, and Manu in turn instructed it to Ikshvaku. So, and we learned this, that the knowledge should only come, it should come from disciplic succession. And this is, one of the key takeaway from this shloka as well. So with that said, if we go further, similarly, God can be, or Krishna can be perceived as Brahman, which is the impersonal light, which is spread across everywhere. And it is nothing but the bodily effulgence of Krishna. Yeah. Just like sun rays are for sun, the effulgence coming out of the sun is sun rays. Then comes the second aspect, which is Paramatma. Now, Paramatma is, the localized aspect. So it is present in each one of us, each living entity and each atom as well. Yeah. And the third aspect, as we go closer, it's Bhagwan. So now we saw that there are certain class of people who believe that the race coming out of Krishna, which is the Brahman, is all in all, right? It is the main thing. Now let's see what Krishna says in next sloka in Bhagavad Gita, 14th chapter. So Brahmano hi pratishtaham amritasya vyavasya cha shashvatasya cha dharmasya shukha saikantikasya cha. And I am the basis of the impersonal Brahman, which is immortal, imperishable, and eternal, and is the constitutional position of ultimate happiness. So, as sun is the basis of sunlight, Krishna is clearly saying here that he is the basis of this impersonal Brahman, the effulgence, the impersonal light coming out of Krishna's body, right? This is also glorified, in one of our another scripture, which is Brahma Samhita by Lord Brahma. And the shloka goes like this. So, Yasya Prabha Prabhavato Jagad Andakoti Kotishva Shesha Vasudhadi Vibhuti Bhinnam Tad Brahma Nishkalam Anantam Ashesha Bhutam Govindam Adi Purushantam Aham Bhajami. So I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, whose effulgence is the source of the non-differentiated Brahman mentioned in the Upanishads. Being differentiated from the infinity of glories of the mundane universe appears as the indivisible, infinite, limitless truth. So this is said by Brahmaji. Yeah. Now I think we are clear that Krishna is the basis of the impersonal right, which is Brahman feature, Brahman aspect. Now, when we learn this, a question may come in our mind that which aspect, when we are talking about three aspects of absolute truth, remember they are, all the three aspects are Krishna's. Yeah? But it may come to our mind that which aspect is most perfect to be worshipped. And, when these questions come to our mind, we realize that, Arjuna, he really is, is acting like such a best friend for us that he's asking the right questions to Krishna, knowing that, in Kali Yuga, our intelligence level would be that, and we would really question, things. So as we learn Gita, we realize that he's clarifying so many important questions for us to have the concept really clear. Now, this is what Krishna answers, to Arjuna, from the 12th chapter. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Mai Avesh Mano Ye Mam Nitya Yukta Upasate Shraddhaya Paryupakritas Te Me Yukto Tamo Mataha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, those who fix their mind on my personal form and are always engaged in worshipping me with great and transcendental faith are considered by me to be most perfect. Yeah. So Krishna is clearly letting us know what aspect should we worship for achieving perfection. Yeah. Krishna is a person. And along with, all these from scriptures, what we are seeing, we also can ourselves experience in our spiritual journey that how Krishna helps us at steps, different steps. We will learn in further, when we go to level 2 of Bhagavad Gita detailed study, as how spirituality is so experiential. And because Krishna is a person, he shows that by his reciprocation. And he says that in Gita, that 4th chapter, 11th verse, that as all of us surrender to him, he will reward each accordingly. Ye yatha mam prapadyante tam sthataiva vachami. Yeah, that's what he says. So as all surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. Yeah. Okay, so then comes, the interesting third topic of the agenda, as are there many gods or there is just one God? And I think we all, since childhood, we must have heard, this is also God, that is also God, etc. Right? So thing comes to our mind when we learn Gita, Are there really many or just one? Now, it seems like we have a huge available options, right? A kind of market for ourselves available, yeah, of gods. Still, there is so much scope for new gods to come in. We see how crazy we are getting in Kali Yuga, that any famous personality, people start worshiping that person. They consider him or her as God. If a rich man is really capable of giving charity, then even that person is considered as God. And some people who have some extra siddhis, like capacity which is given by God, and extra siddhi as compared to the common man. Like there are different siddhis we learn in Vedic scriptures, like Anima, Mahima. So they are different abilities by a person. A person can become smallest, a person can become large. There are different siddhis which are, which some people have. So they show that capacity of doing something magic, and people think they are God. Yeah. So hold on, when we say this, I think most of you might know that Ravana was one of the very powerful siddhi himself as well. He could do, so many siddhis on his own, much more than what we see in today's world. It might be just 0.1% also, less than that. So what we are not talking here about demigods, let me say. It's more about, the stories we come up with in today's world, because demigods who are highlighted in Vedas, right? But some people, who are unauthoritative, they are not in scriptures, and they still, are worshipped. This is the thing. So now, this is the shloka where Krishna, I think, again, one of the important verses of Gita, where Krishna says that it is he who is the compiler of these Vedas, which we always refer to, right? When we talk about scriptures, it's Vedas. Yeah, Vedas mention this. And Krishna clearly says in Bhagavad Gita that, he is the compiler of this Veda, and it is him, through this Vedas are available for us to know him ultimately, because he is the supreme. So sarvasya chaham hridhi sannavishtu matah smritir jnanam apohanam cha vedescha sarvair aham eva vedyo vedanta krad veda vid eva chaham. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me comes remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. By all the Vedas, I am to be known. Indeed, I am the compiler of Vedanta, and I am the knower of the Vedas. So he is the basis of Vedas, right? So it's very clearly mentioned. And Krishna here also highlights that it's he, who gives us the remembrance, that memory power, what we have, which we are sometimes really proud of. It's all given by Krishna. And forgetfulness as well. Quite a lot of times, we think, why don't I remember what I did in my previous life? Why don't I remember what I did that time? So, he's so merciful to us that he helps us forget all the past experiences, because there might be so many dreadful experiences we must have faced, and that would make us more scary to live our current life. So he also gives us that power of forgetfulness, right? So it's very clear here, that he is actually the compiler of Vedas, and also it is him whom we should know through the scriptures. These are made so that we understand Krishna and we know him and we serve him. Yeah. Now, further, one more shloka from 10th chapter. Aham sarvasya prabhavo matah sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante mam bhudabhava samanvitaha. I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. Everything emanates from me. The wise who perfectly know this engage in my devotional service and worship me with all their hearts. Right? He's also clearly mentioning anything to do with spiritual or material, everything is coming out of him. Yeah. And, and who perfectly knows him engages in devotional service. Yeah, it's a service. We have to have the service attitude towards Krishna, not the boss attitude, right? So, and like I mentioned before, the purpose why Krishna has sent us to this, world is so that we can perform devotional service and we can go back to him. Yeah. So, so Krishna really highlights here then that once we engage ourselves in devotional service, with love, we will, that kind of dust which is sitting in our heart, it will uncover, the real picture, and we'll get closer to Krishna. Yeah. And then one more, where a beautiful verse from 7th chapter, how Krishna describes, how he is sustaining us. So mataha parataram nanyat kinchid asti dhananjaya mai sarvam idam protam sutre mani gana iva. So, O conqueror of wealth, there is no truth superior to me. Everything rests upon me, as pearls are strung on a thread. Yeah. So when we see this, we can imagine our chanting beads, our mala which we are wearing, tulsi mala. So everything is sitting, resting there on a thread, right? And Krishna is saying that he is that thread. Everything is resting upon him. All these material world, spiritual world, everything. So with that, I think we know that he is the source. He is, he is the only God, and he is, the cause of all causes, right? So now let's see what scriptures say, or great devtas say, as who is supreme God. And when we say devtas, the first thing we all have in mind is Brahma and Shiva, because sometimes quite a lot of us, keep them in the same radar, Brahma, Shiva, and Krishna, right? So that comes to our mind, right? So let's see what the great demigods are saying. Yeah. So this is a verse from Brahma Samhita said by Brahmaji. Ishwarah Paramah Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govindah Sarvakarana Karanam. Krishna, who is known as Govinda, is the supreme Godhead. He has an eternal, blissful spiritual body. He is the origin of all. He has no other origin, and he is the prime cause of all causes. It's here, it is not only highlighted that Krishna is the cause of all causes, but also Brahmaji highlights how Krishna's body is. Unlike our body, which is made up of material elements, those 8 material elements. But Krishna's body is spiritual. It's transcendental, right? We could see that, right? It's in different pastimes of Krishna. Like in Mahabharata, we saw the Virat Swarup, right? He showed his transcendental body. Everything emanates out of him. Yeah. We saw even, when he was small, when he showed his mother Yashoda the whole universe in just his mouth, right? And also the story from when Brahmaji, when is this happening? When Brahmaji is praying to Krishna is when he stole the cowherd boys and cows, from Vrindavan, and how Krishna expanded himself into all cowherd boys and cows. It's a beautiful story in Bhagavatam. And then, that shows that how he can expand, to innumerable, right? Now, this is from Brahmaji. We have just picked, the key ones. So this is from Shiva. So this is from Rudra Gita, yeah? Srimad Bhagavatam 4th Canto, 24th chapter, 42nd verse. Namasta Ashisham Isha Manave Karanatmane Namo Dharmaya Brahate Krishnaya Kuntaha Medasi Purushaya Purunaya Sankhya Yogeshwaraya Cha. So what does this mean? Yeah. So Shivji is saying, my dear Lord, you are the topmost of all bestowers of all benediction, the oldest and supreme enjoyer amongst all enjoyers. You are the master of all the world's metaphysical philosophy. For you are the supreme cause of all causes, Lord Krishna. You are the greatest of all religious principles, the supreme mind, and you have a brain which is never checked by any condition. Therefore, I repeatedly offer my obeisances unto you. So I think when we are talking about the chief demigods, we always have Brahma and Shiva in our mind. And we can see how Krishna is accepted by these chief demigods like Brahma and Shiva as he's the supreme and the cause of all causes. And that's why Shivji is also called as Param Vaishnava, right? He's the Param Vaishnava of Krishna, the Bhakta, right? So coming to the last but one topic of today, why God is all attractive, unlike our other bosses, right? Now, when we say the word Bhagavan, right? Parashar Muni, he has described the definition as what a Bhagavan is in our scriptures. He has defined it as the one who is full in 6 opulences. Yeah, full in 6 opulences. And what are those 6 opulences? Strength, fame, wealth, knowledge, beauty, and renunciation. Right? So the person who has these qualities, 6 qualities, Aishwaryas, in full, is a Bhagwan. Yeah? And we could see, we'll see when we go to the further detailed Gita classes as how, Krishna is full with all these 6 opulences, right? And we can see, just taking one of the opulence, which is, say the wealth. Did we ever hear about the number of queens and number of palaces Krishna had for each queen, ever? In any other case? No. So he was, he had the supreme wealth. He has, that in full opulence. So similarly, we can see, how in each opulence, he is full. Yeah. So along with all this, we also see some stories from Bhagavatam, Srimad Bhagavatam, yeah, where we can see how, merciful Krishna is and how much of a well-wisher he is for us. Yeah. Let's see 2 to 3 of such stories in brief. So the first one is, I think we all recognize Putana. Yeah. This is the first demon which came to kill Krishna. Yeah. And how did she come? She came by having poison in her breast so that Krishna can suck her milk and he dies. Yeah. And, but we know the story, right? After she was killed by Krishna, right? So the shloka is, Aho bakiyam sthanakalaputam jigham sayapaya yad api asadvi lebhe gatim dhatri uchitam tatonyam kamvadayalum sharanam vrajema. So we know that Bhagavatam was told by Sukadev Goswami to Maharaja Parikshit. Right? So Sukadev Goswami is saying this: Alas, how shall I take shelter of one more merciful than he, who granted the position of mother to a she-demon, Putana, although she was unfaithful and she prepared deadly poison to be sucked from her breast. Yeah. So he's saying here how merciful Krishna is, right? After Putana was killed, where did she go? And that's what is mentioned here. Yeah, that the destination of Putana, because she came to nurse her milk to Krishna, she was given the position of a nursing mother back in spiritual world. Yeah, and Sukhdev Goswami is highlighting here, that who can be so merciful than Krishna, who gave such a destination to a person like Putana, who came, with a deadly poison to be given to him. Right? Similarly, we see then another thing from Bhagavatam. We discussed before how Krishna is Bhakta Vatsalya, right? So this shloka is Yat Sevaya Charana Padma Pavitra Renum Sadhyaha Kshathakila Malam Prathilapta Sheelam Nashrir Viraktam Apimam Vijahati Yasyaha Preksha Itare Niyaman Vahanti. So the Lord continued, because I am the servitor of my devotees, my lotus feet have become so sacred that they immediately wipe out all sins, and I have acquired such a disposition that the goddess of fortune does not leave me, even though I have no attachment for her. While others praise her beauty and observe sacred vows to secure from her even a slight way. So here Krishna is highlighting his, his servitorship to his devotees. Yeah, he's saying here that he is the servitor of his devotees. And we feel really bad to accept that we are, servants of Krishna. Yeah. So we saw how Krishna is Bhakt Vatsalya, right, in prior class, where he even took up the role of being a charioteer for Arjuna. And also we saw how, he had his hospitality when Sudama came in to visit him by washing his feet, right? So this verse highlights especially the aspect of survivorship of Krishna for his devotees. Yeah, like the previous verse, we saw his mercifulness. Okay, so the next verse is a pastime of Maharaja Amrish. I don't know if some of you might know this. So Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Aham Bhakta Paradhino Hi Aswatantra Iva Dvija Sadhu Virgrasta Hridayo Bhakter Bhakta Jana Priyaham. So Supreme Personality of Godhead said to the Brahmana, I am completely under the control of my devotees. Indeed, I am not at all independent. Because my devotees are completely devoid of material desires, I sit only within the course of their heart. What to speak of my devotees? Even those who are devotees of my devotees are very dear to me. Right? So this is the pastime of Maharaja Amrish, where we see that he's a devotee of Lord, and how, I'll just tell the topical bit here, because of time, but how he was a pure devotee of Krishna, and how Durvasa Muni once visited him, and he tried to curse Maharaja Amrish for something which was not a sin, right? So, and when Durvasa Muni tried to attack, had to Maharaja Amrish, Krishna had his Sudarshan Chakra, which started following the Durvasa Muni, and Durvasa Muni went to Brahmaji, Shivji, Vishnu, everybody, and he and at the end Vishnu said that the only person who can spare you from this Sudarshan Chakra is Maharaja Amrish himself, because he is a pure devotee, and Krishna is completely under the control of his devotee. If he forgives you, then you will be forgiven. And Krishna, he is completely under the control of his devotees. We can also see the statement, the example from a pastime of Mahabharata again, where Bhishma Pitama, Krishna had taken the vow, right, that he will not lift any weapon in the war. But Bhishma, he had taken the vow that he will have Krishna lift the weapon. And what happened was, there was a situation where, just to fulfill Bhishma's, wish, Krishna lifted the weapon, which was the wheel of the cart, right? Not thinking that it will let him down with his promise. So this shloka also highlights how we can see how Krishna empowers his devotees. Not only to his devotees, but the devotee of his devotees are also very dear to him. So this is how I think we'll really understand and relish the nectar of this overall Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. We see how really Krishna is a supreme well-wisher for us, and he's our indeed best friend, and how we saw in today's session that Krishna in fact empowers us, right? He's not an exploiting boss, but he is rather and he empowers us to perform, right? Okay, so with this, I would just like to check if we have Sri Gaur Prabhu online. Okay, so we will maybe move to the practical tip of the day. So how can we be a good leader, right? We saw before how we play a lot of leadership roles. You don't have to be like working in a professional field. We also play a lot of leadership roles in our life, right? Day-to-day life, like a parent, different administrative positions we are supporting our families with, right? So how can we, what can we learn from this, and how can we be a good leader, right? The first is, we need to act such a way that we are representative of Krishna. Yeah, behave the right way. Yeah, and nurture. We need to nurture everybody around. Yeah? Then see the good in team members and fan them. Right? Avoid, seeing the weaknesses. Let's focus on the strengths, like Krishna did. Even though Putna came, to kill him, to destroy him, he still, gave her a nursing position, which was how she came in, yeah, and utilized her. So she got the same role in the spiritual world as well, because she could do it well. Right? So be a servant, then a boss. We saw how Krishna himself, is a great example of servitorship, right? He sets that for us. He highlights that his devotee, servitor, then what about us? We should follow Krishna's steps. Yeah. If he, being a supreme, has that attitude of serving his devotees, then what about us? We should be, happily serving others as well. So be with people in their bad times, because what we learned that there's a story of Gajendra in Bhagavatam, how Krishna came for his rescue when he was in a severe bad time. Gajendra was one of the elephants. Yeah? And we will tell the story. I think we can go through this as we start the levels, level 2, where we will go a bit more deeper into these stories as well. But what this is showing is that Krishna is always there with his devotees, yeah, when we need him in our bad times. And similarly, he demonstrates that when he comes to support his devotees, when Gajendra or Maharaja Amrish, like we saw, right? So we should also be with our people around in their bad times. So there is so much to learn from Krishna. This is just a very, we need to wrap this up in a short session, but yeah, we can relish more when we know more. Yeah, there's lots to learn. Yeah? So how to worship this Supreme Lord? When we say Supreme Lord, I think today's session, we understand why we put that Supreme to Krishna, right? And who is the Supreme Lord? It's Krishna. So how can we worship the Supreme Lord? As we do it, during every class end, the sacrifice which is for Kali Yuga is chanting. That is the way we will need to worship God. So Prate Yadhyayatu Vishnum Tretayam Yajato Makhihi Vapare Paricharyayam Kalau Tadhari Kirtanat. So whatever results was obtained in Satyuga by meditating on Vishnu, in Treta Yuga by performing sacrifice, and in Dwapara Yuga by serving the lotus feet of Lord, can be obtained in Kali Yuga simply by chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Right? We saw how much Krishna is doing for us. Right? Now, in return, when we talk about serving him, this is the main way we can do the sacrifice in Kali Yuga. We can serve him. That is by chanting. And I would request you all to please, start chanting. You might have, but I think that will really make us more, acceptable when we go through these. So it's like we will see the presence of Krishna with us. Yeah, like I said, it's experiential. And when we also see this as our slide with, from Kali Santarena Upanishad, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Iti Shodashakam Namnam Kali Kalmasanashanam. Nataha Parataropayah Sarva Vedeshu Drashyate. So these 16 names, composed of 32 syllables, are the only means to counteract the evil effect of Kali Yuga. In all the Vedas, it is seen that to cross the ocean of nuisance, there is no alternative to chanting of the holy name. So with here, we conclude our session for today. And